Welcome back to The Void, everyone. If you're here, you've probably realized that everything you were taught in school was essentially a beautifully curated fan fiction written by the people who won the wars. We love to think of history as this pristine, chronological river of truth, but in reality, it's a crime scene where the evidence is being tampered with in real time. You see, those textbooks your parents paid way too much for, they aren't educational tools. They're political manifestos approved by a committee of bureaucrats who want to make sure you grow up to be a productive, non-questioning little cog in the machine. They decide who gets a monument and who gets a shallow grave in the footnotes. Today we're going to dig up some of those bodies. I've compiled a list of my top 8 historical figures and events that the powers that be tried to delete from your collective memory. Whether it was because they were too radical, too female, or just too inconvenient for the current bottom line, these people were ghosted by history long before social media made it trendy. Let's start about 3,500 years ago in Egypt. Most of you only know Cleopatra because she was played by Elizabeth Taylor and had a thing for Roman generals. But long before her, there was Hatshepsut. She didn't just play the game, she rewrote the rules. When her husband died and the heir was a toddler, she didn't just sit in the corner and knit, she declared herself Pharaoh. She wore the fake beard, she wore the kilt, and she ran Egypt into a golden age of trade and peace for 22 years. So why did it take until the 19th century for us to find her? Because her stepson, Thutmose III, decided that a woman on the throne was a glitch in the system of patriarchy. Decades after she died, he sent soldiers to literally chisel her face off every wall in the kingdom. They smashed her statues so her soul couldn't breathe in the afterlife. Imagine being so threatened by a woman's competence that you spend 20 years trying to delete her from time itself. Meet Nikola Tesla, also known as the bloodthirsty dwarf. This guy was Stalin's right-hand man and the architect of the Great Purge, sending hundreds of thousands to their deaths. He was the ultimate yes man. But in a dictatorship, being the guy who knows where all the bodies are buried makes you the next body. When Stalin needed a scapegoat for the chaos, Yezhov was arrested, tortured, and shot in a basement. But dying wasn't enough. Stalin ordered a total damnatio memoriae. They literally cut him out of photographs with scalpels and airbrushed him into oblivion. In the revised textbooks, he never existed. It's the ultimate lesson for all you corporate strivers out there. You can work 80 hours a week for the great leader, but the moment you become a liability, they won't just fire you, they'll edit you out of the company Christmas photo and act like you were a collective hallucination. We love to celebrate Thomas Edison because he's the great American inventor. But let's be real, Edison was a glorified patent squatter with a marketing degree. The man who actually invented the 20th century was Nikola Tesla. He gave us AC power, radio, and basically predicted your iPhone in 1926. So why did he die alone in a cheap hotel talking to pigeons? Because he made the one mistake capitalism never forgives. He wanted to give something away for free. He built the Wardenclyffe Tower to pull energy from the ionosphere and provide wireless electricity to the whole planet. The moment his financier, J.P. Morgan, realized he couldn't put a meter on it and charge people for the air they breathe, he pulled the plug. Tesla was erased from textbooks for decades, replaced by Edison and Marconi because a mad scientist is a much safer story than a man who tried to bankrupt the oil and coal. You probably learned that Watson and Crick discovered the structure of DNA, good for them. But they didn't do it by being geniuses. They did it by looking at Photo 51, an image stolen from the desk of Rosalind Franklin. Franklin was the one who actually did the hard work of X-ray crystallography. She was the one who saw the helix first. But because the scientific community at the time was essentially a no-girls-allowed treehouse, Watson and Crick took the credit and the Nobel Prize while she died of cancer at 37, likely caused by the radiation from the very work they stole. She was written out of the narrative for years, reduced to a difficult assistant in their memoirs. It's the classic academic move fast and break things strategy. Let the woman do the work, steal the data, and then act surprised when people ask where she went. History isn't just written by the winners, it's written by the guys who are best at taking credit for the group project. Christopher Columbus, the man who discovered a continent that was already home to 60 million people. It's like me discovering your car and then selling your family into slavery. It's not discovery, it's a felony. For decades, textbooks painted him as a brave explorer who proved the Earth was round, which everyone already knew, by the way. They conveniently whitewashed the fact that he was so brutal that even the Spanish crown, people who literally ran the Inquisition, thought he was taking the violence a bit too far. We turned a man who triggered one of the greatest genocides in human history into a hero for children, because every empire needs a myth of noble beginnings to hide the blood on the floor. If you want to know who is in power today, look at who we still give a holiday to, despite the body count. You think cancel culture is something new? Honey, the Romans were the CEOs of cancelling people. They called it damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. If the Senate decided you were a vibe killer or, a tyrant, they didn't just kill you, they erased you. They would melt your coins, tear down your statues, and literally scrape your name out of every legal document in the empire. It was a fate worse than death because it meant you never existed. It shows that power has always been about controlling the server of human memory. If you control the records, you control reality. The only difference is that today we do it with shadow banning and deplatforming, while the Romans did it with a hammer and a lot of spite. Honestly, I kind of respect the manual labor involved. Now let's talk about someone the US government tried very hard to make you forget. Fred Hampton. At 21, he was the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party. He wasn't just a militant, he was a bridge builder. He created the Rainbow Coalition, bringing together poor black people, Puerto Ricans, and even Confederate flag-wearing white Southerners to fight against the same systemic poverty. That terrified the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover called him a messiah who could unify the masses. So naturally, they didn't debate him. They drugged him and assassinated him in his bed while his pregnant fiancée lay next to him. But the whitewashing didn't stop with his death. For years, the official story was that the Panthers started a shootout. It took decades of lawsuits to prove the FBI and police fired 99 rounds, while the Panthers fired exactly 1. They tried to bury his message of unity under a pile of terrorist labels, because nothing is more dangerous to the status quo than poor people realizing they have more in common with each other than with the billionaires who rule them. And finally, we have the ultimate irony. Joseph Stalin spent his entire life being the editor-in-chief of reality. He was the guy who decided Yezhov didn't exist. He was the guy who had history books rewritten every time he changed his mind about who his friends were. But history has a sick sense of humor. A few years after he died, his successor Khrushchev gave a secret speech, denouncing him. Suddenly, the man who was worshipped as a god was the villain. They took his body out of the mausoleum under the cover of night, they renamed the cities named after him, and they pulled down the thousands of statues he had built for himself. The great purger got purged from his own empire. It's the perfect end to our list because it proves that no matter how much you try to control the narrative, the truth is like water. It eventually leaks through the cracks and drowns the person who tried to dam it up. You can whitewash the past all you want, Joe, but eventually someone else will come along with a bigger bucket of white paint. So, what did we learn today? Besides the fact that everyone is a thief and the world is a lie. We learned that history isn't a fixed thing. It's a battleground. When you see a hero in a textbook, ask yourself, who did they have to silence to make this person look good? When you see a villain, ask, whose profits did they threaten? The process of whitewashing is happening right now, in real time, through educational censorship and corporate algorithms. Don't let them ghost your intellect. The most reliable textbook isn't the one on your desk. It's your own ability to think critically and dig for the dirt they tried to hide. Stay skeptical, stay woke, and for the love of everything, stop letting people who don't even like you tell you who you are. I'm out. I have to go see if my own Wikipedia page has been edited by my enemies yet. Catch you in the next one, if we haven't been erased by then.